Hi, I'm Nicole Ferraro, and this is The Divide, a podcast from Light Reading exploring the ongoing digital divide, why and where it still exists, and what needs to be done to get people everywhere connected to reliable, high-speed internet. Today we're speaking with Shirley Bloomfield, CEO of NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association. After decades of working for and leading NTCA, Shirley is set to retire this March. In today's chat, we discuss a range of topics, including how the digital divide and connectivity landscape in rural America has changed over the years that she's been at the helm of NTCA, as well as her thoughts on what's going on with the federal government's BEAD program and the impact of the Trump administration's changes to that program on the communities NTCA serves. And we discuss ongoing negotiations in Congress around the Universal Service Fund, why USF matters, and what's next in the fight to reform and preserve it. Shirley, welcome back to the podcast. It is so great to be here with you today. How's it going?
Things are great. A little snowy and icy, but all good.
A little snowy and icy is probably an understatement, but it's so rare that we get a storm that affects most of us in the United States. So it's a unifying experience.
So true. And think about it this way as well, Nicole, that if we didn't have broadband access, all of these kids would really get a snow day. Now they have virtual learning. So
you know what? Maybe we should be expanding the digital divide so that more kids can get snow days.
A real snow day.
Yeah. I'm going to shift the focus of this podcast to ending broadband access so kids can enjoy the snow. Thank you, Shirley. I appreciate
it. Just maybe 1 or 2 days a year.
Yeah. Okay. Reasonable. So we are gathered here today because you are nearing your retirement from NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association. You've been there for a little while. You've been at the helm of NTCA since 2010, right? But you've been with the organization for over 3 decades in total, which is incredible. And now you are set to retire in March. So first of all, congratulations on your retirement and your many years of service to the rural broadband industry. And before we get into all the good old broadband topics, I just want to start by asking how it feels to be at this point and in the process of wrapping up all of your work.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the congratulations. It has been quite a ride and has been really, really fulfilling. I think every day how lucky I am to have fallen into this field and to be able to work with all the people I get to work with. But I think the biggest thing I'm feeling right now is just the sense of urgency about all of the things I'm hoping that I and we at NTCA can get accomplished before I actually walk out the door. But certainly know that there will be an agenda and a list of things for my successor to take on when he or she comes in. And I'm feeling this rush of like all the things I want to get done. So it's been kind of crazy. There's no sitting back thinking about like, yeah, maybe I should just plan a retirement party.
Yeah, no, that shows your dedication to this industry that you've served for so long, that here at the end, you're just trying to think of how much you can do before you actually exit. So that's great. And the industry's been lucky to have you all this time. So let's shift into some broadband specific topics. Given you have such a long history with NTCA, I'm just curious at a high level how you feel the state of the rural digital divide and rural broadband connectivity has changed over the course of your time, really at the helm of NTCA, let's say, because obviously the internet story has changed dramatically in 30, 40 years.
It truly has, but it's funny. And maybe part of it is when you hit this point in your career, and I'll compare notes when you're ready for it, but you start to reflect, right? You start to kind of think back and, at the end of the day, it's all about connectivity. It's really, even when I started in, the 1980s, it was really about making sure people in rural and remote parts of the country had access to communication services. So we were still, you forget, we were still building phone service out to people. It was still expensive and tough to reach them. So now it's really a technology evolution in terms of how we're trying to reach them and what that connectivity looks like. So I do think, that's kind of one thing that's pretty funny. But I do reflect because I came back to NTCA in 2010, which was when the National Broadband Plan had been released.
Right.
And that was a really high anxiety moment for the community-based providers. They were really struggling under that plan to figure out a path forward. And there was a lot of work to be done to educate policymakers about the role that these small community-based companies played in really bridging this divide and how critical they were to the parts of the country that they serve, because nobody else wanted to be out there. There's a reason they existed. So I think the fun thing has been, looking at metrics. I look at metrics like broadband. Every year when we do our broadband survey, the number that creeps up, and I think our latest one shows that 92% of our customers for my member companies have access to fiber to the home technology. And I'm just like, I'm always excited. It's just that needle keeps moving and moving and moving. And, that 8%, yeah, that's probably going to be pretty tough to do a fiber to the home build everywhere in these areas. But I love seeing that steady state of progress. So I would say that's been really very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's incredible. So of course, obviously that statistic alone shows that things have gotten dramatically better in this time period. But of course, there are still challenges, like you point out, for the final percentage of people who don't have fiber, and broader challenges with keeping rural America connected. So how do those ongoing challenges differ from the challenges you were first presented with when you took over? And what are some of the challenge as you leave? What are the challenges that still maybe keep you awake, that rural America is going to still be dealing with as it pertains to broadband connectivity? And really keeping up, because as you point out, it's almost like a game of catch up all the time, because the technology is always evolving.
All the time. And that has been really the fun thing about watching my members be such early adopters of fiber technology and be so bullish about fiber, is when they made that pivot, and pretty much walked away from DSL and copper service pretty early compared to a lot in the industry. I think that has made them kind of have that early pivot, and now they are just continuing to build. So what I am seeing now is more of a focus on what are those neighboring areas? What are those areas served by my CLEC or some of these other areas that I can reach into with the same type of technology that I'm bringing to those folks who have been my customer base for years and years and years. So I think that's been kind of interesting to watch, because what that has meant is, watching their ability to manage in a world where you're trying to be more efficient. Your OpEx goes down, the efficiency of the fiber. I look at stuff like this last weekend. I reach out to my members and I was like, okay, big storm coming. You let us know if you've got issues. We do an emergency disaster recovery network. My guys, the biggest issue is power. Thankfully, because of their fiber plant and because of a lot of their buried plant, I didn't get any reports of my members really being down, and just a few for just a little blip. And again, most of it is power issues. So I think of all of that evolution, and that's pretty exciting. So,
yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah. So let's move into a heavier topic. The BEAD program. I'm not going to call it the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program anymore. But so you are exiting NTCA just as the revised version of BEAD is set to move forward in the States. Good move. No, of course.
Timing is everything, Nicole.
Exactly. Ooh, dodge that. So of course we are dealing with a different BEAD program than we were a year ago, a couple years ago. As the program was revised by the Trump administration to essentially prioritize lower cost deployments, which made more room for satellite and unlicensed fixed wireless, and reduce the amount of fiber builds awarded, though fiber is still set to reach over 60% of BEAD locations, which is a lot less than we were initially expecting, but still maybe more than people were fearing when the rules were rewritten. So what are your thoughts on where things stand now with BEAD? What have these changes meant for your members? And do you have concerns about the increase in locations going to satellite and fixed wireless?
So as you know, as we were going through the process, we were really pushing for that fiber preference, and for so many reasons, aside from the fact that, again, it's more efficient. You get that OpEx, you're a small company. You don't have that, you don't want to go back in and do your plant over again in 5 years. That's not a good use of resources. Also, the other thing is we just see how consumers demand and devour broadband. I was just down in Texas about a week ago with one of my cooperative members down there and listening to them talk about how 26% of their consumers want gig, are taking gig service. I mean, the demand is growing. And I think we've got to be real about the fact that if you're going to build a broadband program, you really should be building to where consumers are going. And frankly, they're already there. So I do worry about that. And the other thing that I will say is there have been some positive changes as we've gone through some of the BEAD gyrations, in that a focus on permitting relief. How can we do some of this faster and quicker and more efficiently? And I think that's been a good focus, because that really does tie up builds for a lot of folks. The thing that I would say has been problematic is that the bargain deal, I don't even know what to call it anymore, but
I like honestly, bargain basement. I think
it just feels that way to me, right? I mean, there is this sense of, these folks have spent years going through, here's the area, here's what I want to serve, here's what I want to use to serve them. This is what it looks like, working with their states working with NTIA going back to the states. Well, when I've watched my companies go through this pencil sharpening exercise, at some point, and there's no constituency that is better situated to bring these services than my companies. They've existed for 100 years. They know rural like nobody knows rural. Mm-hmm. They know customer service like nobody knows customer service. And frankly, they live where they are providing these services. So they live with the consequences and with the consumers. And I've watched a number of my companies walk away. We've tried to do some informal polling. So I don't have anything scientific, but probably about half are probably either have walked away or will walk away, because they simply, that pencil sharpening has brought them down to a number where they're basically looking at it saying, I can't do it. I can't do it unless I want to be like those providers who got into RDOF and then wound up defaulting. And my companies don't want to be in that position. They don't want to lead false expectations to consumers. They know what it's going to take. And if they realistically look at it on paper and say, I can't make this work. And by the way, I'm not sure I can actually sustain the network, because the other requirement of you're not getting any additional federal support for any of these BEAD areas, which means none of those areas will be eligible for universal service.
That's right.
That makes it very, very difficult to say, I can commit, I can build, I can sustain. And oh, by the way, these are the most rural, high-cost areas of the country. There is a reason it is unserved. So that makes it a tough proposition. But on the flip side, I do have a number moving forward. I am delighted. They are committed to trying to do what they do best, which is bringing, top-notch service to these folks who are or underserved. So I think everybody's having to make the decision that makes the most sense for themselves, and not leading false expectations for consumers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, RDOF, where we saw a lot of defaults, a lot of companies coming back to the FCC saying they needed more money in order to fulfill their awards, blaming inflation and supply chain issues. I mean, we're in another economically squishy period. Maybe that's not the right terminology.
It's a very good scientific term. I'm going to adopt that one going forward.
Yeah, a period of uncertainty, things, we still have lots of questions around tariffs, which seem to change on a whim.
And that impacts so many pieces of equipment, right? And hardware and software, right? So, and then that also means you've got to plan longer, better, earlier. But how can you, when you're still not sure where some of these programs are going to end up? You can't put yourself in the situation where you're like, well, I'm not sure if I'll get BEAD, so I'm going to order my supplies now, lock in a price, hopefully lock in access to fiber, which, as you know, is getting tougher and tougher these days.
Yeah.
And then find that I ultimately what I have to agree to, I can't sustain that bid. So, people are in a little bit of a paradox right now.
Yeah. So for your members then that have valiantly moved forward with BEAD and gotten awards, are those some of their main concerns, like going into this program? Is it the state of the supply chain, the potential for cost overruns, things like that?
And timeframes. So I think,
Timeframes.
and I
Yeah.
would say I would throw timeframes in there too. So again, timeframes are always impacted by the regular, whatever permitting process, and
Hmm.
but timeframes on access to materials. If you're being told that ribbon fiber is now 60 weeks out, and then that doesn't mean that you're still going to get what you need, and you don't know who else is going to come in. And we also know the hyperscalers are just gobbling up the products in the glass. Well, what if suddenly that puts you a year behind?
Right.
And you've got, with a program like BEAD, you're going to have, when we finally really do roll out, you're going to have some pretty tight time restrictions. So, I think there will be some need to have some latitude there. And to your point, what will be the price on some of these products at the time? And, what will be your final award? And will you have to then look at the numbers and say, you know what, for X amount that I went in to build, instead of these 3 towns, maybe I'm going to hit these 2 towns.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to see some adjustments and based on all of this. So I think there's a lot of things that are very fluid.
Yeah. Yeah. When I hear, this is me saying this, me, Nicole Ferraro, not Shirley Bloomfield. When I hear benefit of the bargain, it does feel like I'm being gaslit a little bit, which is something I'm feeling familiar with some other statements coming from the federal government recently. But I won't make you respond to that at all. I'm just going to keep it moving here. Um, in terms of a couple of other things on BEAD, so for your members that have gotten awards, do you have a sense of how far they are from actually getting the money? Like where things are in this process? Secondarily, a quick follow up is there was a lot of time spent on revising the waiver around Build America, Buy America. To what extent is any of that still applicable to the new version of BEAD? Like, what's your understanding of those rules? And did the changes made to that?
Well,
those regulations under Biden carry over? Where are we with that?
there's a lot of moving pieces, and I just saw something from NTIA come out today, so I haven't even read it.
Okay.
So there's something else on letter of credit. So I have not pursued what that actually is doing at this point. I think there's a couple of things that are going to be impactful. I think there had been a potential waiver process. I think this current NTIA is not interested in allowing some folks to do some waivers in terms of matching funding. That's becoming a little bit of a challenge for folks. So I do think that's going to be impactful. I also think the Buy America provision, what's going to be interesting there. There was just some really interesting stories that have been released in the last 24 hours, just given kind of an acknowledgement of the supply chain around fiber and availability. The question might become, what kind of latitude will the administration give? Maybe not on Chinese fiber, but, can we do South Korean fiber? Can we do Japanese fiber? Because again, it's that contrast of there will be when BEAD does roll out, and we're still at that stage where really there's no shovels in the ground yet. But when the shovels in the ground really hit, and you've got, again, data centers, I think that there is just going to have to be some latitude and recognition that to do this, I'm not sure American manufacturers can produce the supply that will be needed in that short period of time.
Right.
I know folks like Corning have really, worked hard to get some new plants up and coming, but, they just announced a deal with Meta this morning. So what does that mean in terms of their supply? So I do think there's going to, I guess the message I would leave it with is there's going to have to be some latitude as we get towards the finish line on BEAD, where money will start to go out the door. We're going to have some latitude. Yeah. I just think to really make this program even partially successful, I think we're going to have to really take a look. And And hopefully the state broadband offices will be able to continue to play a role. I think those folks closer on the ground have a better sense of what's happening in their states. And my hope is that they continue to advocate for the stakeholders in their states who will be striving to bring connectivity to their own constituencies.
Yeah.
So,
well, something for your successor to deal with.
I'll be watching from afar and cheering them all
on a beach somewhere. So one more BEAD related thing. Of course, as we speak, the state of non-deployment funds remains up in the air. I think we've just mentioned like 6 topics where those could be of use, but why are those funds important to your members and rural communities? And what would you like to see happen here?
So I think those funds have been really important for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, we forget, we take for granted digital literacy. I mean, we like to throw that around, but, in reality, we just ran, for example, through our Smart Rural Community Program, a senior trained online safety series. I mean, so many things about being online and what kind of tools can we put in consumers' hands that make them better users of some of this technology. The other thing I think, quite honestly, is, there's a part of me that really wants to see the BEAD program work well. I want to see those other entities that come in and apply for money actually do what they say they're going to do. There's a part of me that says, could non-deployment funds be actually utilized to ensure there's transparency in the program? Let's utilize some of that to see, are we really building what we said we're going to build? Let's do that before somebody has to go before a congressional panel in 4 years. To say, did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? And did carriers who said they were going to build really do the job? So I think there's a number of uses. And again, I also throw into that the whole affordability question. And I continue to think that, we can only keep people online if they can afford to be online.
Indeed. Yes, the Affordable Connectivity Program is long dead at this point, and no one even mentions it anymore in Congress. So, and relatedly, the other big program that helps support affordability to some degree is the Universal Service Fund with the Lifeline program and, of course, high cost programs. This is just a guess, but I imagine if there's one thing that you wish had gotten done before you exited the organization, it would have been Congress moving forward with securing and reforming USF. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but otherwise, where do you feel like discussions stand around USF, and what's your parting plea for Congress when it comes to the need to preserve that program?
Oh, you are so right. If there's one thing I would have loved, I did commit that I would stay through the Supreme Court case.
Yes.
And so getting that victory last June, which basically said, yes, indeed, USF contributions are constitutional. That was a big win. And that was really one of my commitments to the organization, seeing that through. The rest, and this is part of the reason for my timing, the rest of this battle now just has become another 3, 4, 5-year battle. And it would not be fair to the people I represent to leave in the middle of that, which is why this really felt like the right time and the right transition point for my successor to then take on the next stage of this. So I look at it and I think, I'm really delighted the USF working group does continue to meet. They are meeting, they are talking, they are sharing ideas. I love that. I also give the FCC some credit. Earlier this fall, there had been some talk about the FCC coming out with some different ideas regarding universal service, including things like reverse auctions and things that felt like they were a little bit more of potentially a race to the bottom. I have been really delighted to hear the chairman making more comments about pushing off that notice of proposed rulemaking to the spring, talking about the importance of sustainability and of the resources that have already been used to build these networks. So that has been a really great development. And I like the fact that the working group and the chairman and the other 2 commissioners are talking to the USF working group. That is really where it's going to have to get done. It's going to really have to have folks coming together and understanding the importance of this program. And, I think to your point, it's a lot about affordability. People don't really understand that if you didn't have a universal service program, aside from having networks that would not be built into these high cost areas, aside from the support that schools and libraries and rural healthcare all utilize, I look at it and I think the fact that people in these rural communities aren't charged, what it actually costs to provide their monthly service, in some cases $200, $300, $400 a month, you'd lose so many people online, and the value of the network increases by the number of participants you have on it. So I'm delighted to see the focus. I just think that, Congress, it's been tough to get some things through. So far, this has been bipartisan, bicameral. And you know what, Nicole? There aren't a lot of things in Congress that you can say have both Democrats and Republicans and senators and congressmen and women at the table together. So that gives me hope.
All right. I like that. And I know we're over time here, but to close us out, I just wanted to get your thoughts on or anything you're particularly proud of as you reflect back on your time at NTCA, or any advice for your future leaders. And do you have plans to stick around in this space anywhere?
So a couple of things. I will say that, my parting thought, particularly to the folks who work in this industry, is that on your best of days and on your worst of days, I want everybody to remember that the work they do matters, and it matters to so many people, and it matters to the seniors that are aging in place. It matters to the school kids, who have access to connectivity, and the world opens up because of broadband access. It makes a difference to the small businesses. That continues to just inspire me every day. And I know it sounds super cliche, but I really mean it. There is nothing I love more than getting in the field and talking to customers and having them share how having connectivity has changed their lives. And I think it's really important for the people, whether you're reporting on it, whether you're building it, whether you're supporting those efforts, for everybody in this industry to remember it matters. It makes a difference. And in this day and age, when we spin our wheels and there's so much noise, let's remember this is a really good thing that is happening. And that's really, really important to me. In terms of what I'll be doing, I do think that it's going to be important for me to get out of the way of my successor. However, there will be some potential opportunities down the road for me to get engaged in areas where I might be able to support the industry in terms of identifying talent, identifying roles for folks to play potentially within community-based providers, and kind of connecting some of that talent to some of the opportunities that might be there. So that might be something in the offing. And when I'm not doing that, I sit on the board for CERC, which does the reliability of the grid in the Southeast. So I'm still all wrapped around infrastructure.
Well, they're lucky to have you. We've been lucky to have you. Congratulations once again. And thank you so much for your time and your many years of service to rural America.
Nicole, it's been a treat working with you, and I'll be excited to see what you do in the future as well.
Thank you. Thank you again, Shirley, for joining me and for all the insights you've shared with us over the years. Thank you as well to Pierre Landriau for editing this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more episodes of The Divide, as well as interviews and insights from the Light Reading team. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.